Little Jenny's Journey Through the Phases of Learning to Read and Spell. Hi, this is Jennifer Militzer-Kopperl of Renewal of Literacy. I'd like to tell you the story of my journey through the phases of learning to read and spell. It will help you understand the phases and how to teach all your students to read and spell. You're probably wondering why there are tadpoles and frogs on my introductory slide. J. Richard Gentry, author of Breakthrough in Beginning Reading and Writing, has a great analogy about beginning readers and mature ones. He says, and I quote, "Beginning readers are like tadpoles in metamorphosis. And as with tadpoles and frogs, little readers are not smaller developing versions of the mature ones. They are different versions, needing special nurturing, alternative environments, and unique kinds of instructional support for growth." And tadpoles? Well, tadpoles can't read at all. They have no clue separate speech sounds or phonemes exist. The journey from tadpole to adult frog is the phases of learning to read and spell. Let's journey through the phases of learning to read and spell. There are 5 phases of learning to read and spell. They are as follows. Number 1, emergent phase. Number 2, phonemic awareness phase. Number 3, pattern phase. Number 4, syllable phase. And number 5, Latin Greek phase. The phases are loosely based on the work of Bear et al. In Words Their Way. FYI, I highly recommend this book. If you haven't already done so, please check it out. The material comes from my book, The Roadmap to Literacy. Both the original edition co-authored with Janet Langley and the Roadmap to Literacy Renewal of Literacy Edition, which is a solo venture that I did on my own. The phases of learning to read and spell depend on the development of 3 capacities, or sensory cognitive functions. Number 1, concept imagery. Number 2, phonemic awareness. And number 3, symbol imagery. I'm going to explain these 3 capacities, or sensory cognitive functions, as we go. Joining us will be little Jenny, my younger self. She's going to provide a first-hand account of one student's journey through the phases of learning to read and spell to illustrate what it's like for students moving through these phases. Without further ado, let's begin. The first phase is the emergent phase. I want you to stop and think about how easy it is to hurt a tadpole. What happens if you ask a tadpole to jump? This is the story of my first day in kindergarten. Beginning public school kindergarten, I'm dressed to the nines. Yeah, it was the 70s. I'm wearing my favorite clothes. You can see that I've got on a vest my mom made especially for me. I'm wearing my special bunny pants. I love my classmates. I love my teacher, Mrs. Prosser. I learn about chocolate milk during milk and cookie time. Then it all went wrong. Mrs. Prosser sat us down in a circle, and she told us that we needed to do an introductory game where we would say our name and one thing that we like that begins with the same sound as the first letter in our names. So people went around the circle. They would say things like, "Hi, I'm Mikey, I like monkeys." "Hi, I'm Sam, I like swimming." And when it came to me, I said, "Hi, I'm Jenny, and I like cats." Mrs. Prosser's response was, "No, it has to be the same sound as the first letter of your name. You could say that you're Jenny and you like jumping or jelly beans." Well, there was one problem with this. I didn't particularly like jumping, and I didn't really like jelly beans. I really preferred to play on the monkey bars. And if you were going to give me a type of Easter candy, I would much prefer the little chocolate eggs. I had no idea what my teacher was talking about, and I concluded that she didn't know anything about me and really didn't have any interest. The problem is little Jenny in kindergarten does not realize that separate speech sounds or phonemes exist. She does not realize that the letter J represents the sound J, as in Jenny or jelly bean or jumping. She's a little tadpole swimming in the sea of language, oblivious to phonemes. She's at the very beginning of the emergent phase, and her teacher is asking her to do something that's impossible. Another way to look at it is this. The introduction game requires the capacity for phonemic awareness, but all little Jenny had was concept imagery. This begs the question, what is concept imagery and what is phonemic awareness? Well, concept imagery is the capacity to visualize in 3 dimensions based on language. If you look at the picture here, this young woman is imagining a cat. And she can see a 3-dimensional fuzzy little cat, much like the one who's leaving my house right now. Phonemic awareness, however, is the ability to segment a word into its sounds and manipulate them. For example, the same young woman is imagining the sounds for the word cat and saying them. K, a, t. There are 3 phonemes or separate speech sounds in the word cat, and the first one is k. Little Jenny had concept imagery, but not phonemic awareness. She had no idea that phonemes or sounds exist. Consequently, Mrs. Prosser's game was entirely beyond her understanding. As little Jenny, I had no idea that the letter J represents the sound J as in Jenny, much less J as in jumping or J as in jelly beans. As a student in the emergent phase, I found this game absolutely impossible. You might as well ask a tadpole to jump. Let's consider what was going on. Humans are to language as fish are to water. Humans are so immersed in language that we're not aware of it. In order to develop literacy, students have to realize that speech can be broken down into smaller units, such as words, syllables, and sounds or phonemes. It was the inability to realize that words are made up of phonemes that little Jenny lacked on her first day of public school kindergarten. As a result, little Jenny was hurt. I had no idea of understanding what Mrs. Prosser was asking of me, or why my answer was wrong. As I told you, I concluded my teacher did not know anything about me and didn't want to. This horrible experience is burned into my memory. It ruined the first day of school. Fortunately, every day is a new day. As the school year progressed, Mrs. Prosser started to introduce the letters of the alphabet, and I had an epiphany. Letters represent sounds. My name begins with the J sound. J is for Jenny, J, J. And J is for jumping, jelly beans, and juggle. The introductory game suddenly made sense to me. I was like a tadpole that was just starting to metamorphose. Note my itty-bitty legs and my super long tail. But my troubles were far from over. Now that I knew letters represent sounds, Mrs. Prosser expected me to jump into reading when I barely had any legs. She asked me to read the Matt the Rat series, and I was in serious trouble. Here's an example of one of the readers that plagued me as little Jenny. Note that its title is Matt. Over and over again, I would look at the letters M, A, T in this simple little book and say the sounds for each letter. Ah, t. But try as I might, I could not blend those stupid sounds into a word. Mat. It was all Greek to me. I spent the entire time spitting and grunting each sound as I looked at the letter. Ah, t. It was like being some horrible Frankenstein. I hated reading. As we will see, I was missing something incredibly important. I was missing phonemic awareness. The problem, little Jenny knew the alphabet. She realized that letters represent sounds. But as little Jenny, I could not use the alphabet to sound out words because no one had given me direct instruction in phonemic awareness, specifically blending sounds into words. I could not blend sounds into words because I had never segmented sounds in words. I had never gone from mat, ah, t, to ah, t, mat. Therefore, my little tadpole legs were too small and my tail too long to leap into reading. As a result, at the end of public school kindergarten, I was one discouraged kid. So now that I've talked about my experience as little Jenny, let's summarize some of the key points of little Jenny's journey in the emergent phase. Little Jenny did not have any awareness of sounds or phonemes when she began kindergarten because her parents thought she should not begin academics until she started school. As a result, little Jenny was far behind her peers who attended preschool and watched Sesame Street. Little Jenny did not have any of the prerequisites she needed for reading. She did not have phonemic awareness of individual sounds, and she did not have the ability to blend sounds into a word, such as ah, t is the word mat. In other words, little Jenny had exactly what Rudolf Steiner, founder of Waldorf education, wanted for Waldorf students, a healthy childhood. However, little Jenny was woefully ill-equipped for school and was far behind her peers. Up next, the phonemic awareness phase, phase 2. This has been Jennifer Militzer-Kopperl of Renewal of Literacy. Thank you for accompanying me on my journey through the phases. Join me in renewing literacy for the 21st century and beyond.